Hey everybody, in this video we're going to talk about rhythm in poetry. So our outcomes for this lesson, you should be able to, at the end of this video, describe how rhythm is used in language and poetry, identify stressed and unstressed syllables, execute scansion to analyze poetic rhythm, and use tools like the dictionary or the International Phonetic Alphabet to assist you in your composition of poetry. So we're using those terms rhythm and meter. This week we're talking about rhythm. Next week we'll be talking about meter. We're using those two terms because they have correlate terms in music. If you've ever studied music or performed on a musical instrument, you're familiar with the concepts of rhythm and meter. Well, rhythm and meter appear as terms in poetry as well. And the reason is because poetry brings out the music in language. So just like in music, language has a rhythm. You're able to understand what I'm saying right now effortlessly because I'm speaking in a natural rhythm. My language and the words that I'm using are being broken up into intonation chunks. And each chunk there's a rise and a fall, there's a loud and a soft, there's things going on naturally with the rhythm of my voice that helps you understand. If I were to talk in a different type of intonation with different levels of speed, that gets creepy and weird, right? So artificial, and it sounds like an android or some funky thing going on, right? And it's hard to even understand what a person is saying sometimes if the rhythm is kind of messy. So poetry captures that rhythm, and it uses the fact that language can be arranged into rhythm, sometimes intentionally, to create structures in phrases and combinations of words that may not normally fall out of a person's mouth, but because of the way that they're arranged, it brings out a music to the language, and that accentuates or adds emotion to the meaning, to the impact of the language being used. So to understand that, we need to understand syllables, which are the building blocks of words, building blocks of the language. So words are comprised of syllables. So day has one syllable, today has two syllables, yesterday has three syllables. So one way that I kind of help myself figure out how many syllables are in a word, sometimes I clap it out. So day, I only clapped one time to say day, but when I say today, I'm clapping two times. Yesterday, there's three syllables in that word. So sometimes that can help. Try the clapping method to figure out the rhythm of words. So the number of syllables is determined by the number of vowel sounds in a word. So let's take a look at this first word, A. Well, hopefully you figured out that that's one syllable. What about the word eight? It's one syllable as well. Now, sometimes people will pronounce it if we're trying to figure out how many syllables are in a word. Sometimes I'll hear students accentuate the end sound on a word. You don't want to do that and say like eight. That t, you're adding a vowel sound where there's normally a silent e, right? So you would never say like I ate an apple. That would be really weird. So you would say I ate an apple. Rate, trait, straight, straights. So notice for each one of these words, they're getting longer. We're getting more consonants added, more consonant sounds added on the front and the back ends here. Straight is 8 letters long, and A is only 1 letter long. And yet they're both the same number of syllables. So all of the words in this list, they're just 1 syllable long. A, 8, rate, trait, straight, straights. And that might be a little counterintuitive because you might think like, well, straight sounds like 3 syllables. So you've got to pay attention that the number of syllables is determined not by how long the word is or how complicated the word is. It's determined by the number of vowel sounds in the word. So a word like straights, it has an STR at the beginning, and those take a long time to enunciate, longer than the word A. But they do not add any syllables to the word. Same thing, the TS at the end doesn't add any syllables at the end. So this word straights is just 1 syllable. So you'll notice here, the one thing to notice in this list here is that words could take longer or shorter to say and still have the same number of syllables. So for example, if I were to time myself, I bet I could say A a lot of times in 1 minute, way more than I could say the word straights in 1 minute. Because I'd be saying a. I could probably get like 500 A's in 1 minute. But I'd be saying straights, 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 straights. It takes a lot longer time to say that word, right? So in some ways, we can be kind of deceived by the length of a word. So that's something to notice here. The number of syllables is always determined by the number of vowel sounds. So you can disregard consonants. So let's take a look at these words for example. So how about in the word potato? We've got an A, we've got an O, we've got an A, and we've got an O. Potato. So we've got 3 syllables. Clap it out. Potato. Easy, right? Carrot, we've got an A and we've got an O. So we've got 2 vowels. So we've got 2 vowel sounds, 2 syllables. Carrot. 2 syllables. How about this one? U, O, U, A, and E. We've got 5 vowels. So this word should be 5 syllables, right? Clap it out, test it out. Unfortunate. That was 4 syllables. So is it 4 syllables or 5 syllables? Hopefully you caught that I'm trying to trick you here. And we've got this silent E at the end, right? That's not going to be pronounced. So we wouldn't say unfortunate. So it would be 4 syllables. So because we can be tricked by, before I jump onto the dictionary, so we can be tricked by these, we all know that an E at the end of the word is silent when it's in this type of situation, but there can be some pretty tricky words in English. There are diphthongs, there are complicated multi-vowels going together in the same kind of unit, and sometimes they're pronounced separately, sometimes they're pronounced together. So how can you, is there an authority that can help us understand the exact number of syllables in the word for when we have our confusing moments? And that's where the dictionary comes in. So dictionaries try to represent pronunciation faithfully in various ways. So 2 common methods they use are phonetic respelling and IPA. Let's take a look at the dictionary really quick. So I usually go to dictionary.com. Merriam-Webster is a great choice as well. So I'm going to look up the word rate. So you'll see here is the word rate. And now right here, we've got the pronunciation of the word. And you can listen to it here. Right. And it'll, for a word that you don't know, it'll read the word for you. We've got an assignment this week where I'm asking you guys to look up the pronunciations of words, because we've got some funky sounding words this week, like trimeter. And I don't want you to end up pronouncing them wrong because you don't know what the pronunciation is. So as you look them up, right, click that button, listen to what the pronunciation is. But so you'll notice here that we have R, the R sound, and then we have this EY, which according to dictionary.com is the A sound, and then we have a T, so the T sound, R-A-T. So that is what's known as the phonetic respelling. So if we look at the phonetic respellings for these different words, you can see they're pretty similar. They all have an A sound in the middle. So A, 8, rate, trait, straight, straights. Now, there's also something called the IPA, or the International Phonetic Alphabet. And that's what you see over here, this phonemic chart. These are all of the vowel and consonant sounds used in American English. So we have an E sound and then an I sound next to it. So it's saying that that A sound, it's a diphthong. A diphthong is where your tongue moves in the middle of a complex vowel sound, as opposed to a monophone where your tongue stays still. So when we make this sound A, we start in the position, as in bed, and then we finish in the I position, as in ship. A. So that's how the IPA works. The IPA is a more scientific approach to language and linguistics. If you're interested in linguistics, or if you're interested in poetry, songwriting, anything like that, then your job is to learn the IPA. If you're not really interested in poetry or songwriting or anything, you just think it's kind of cool and you're just here to, for the next 3 weeks, study about poetry, then the phonetic respelling will be just fine for you. But yeah, the IPA is a scientific approach. It's used for all languages. That's why it's called the International Phonetic Alphabet. And so these symbols that you see here, they represent the complex sounds of the English language using specific symbols, as opposed to trying to take the 26 letters of the English alphabet and arrange those into configurations that'll be easier to recognize with the phonetic respelling. So I find the phonetic respelling problematic, but part of that is because I have a background in linguistics. But so for example, EY, when I see an EY, I generally think of that as being an E sound, like in the word key or monkey. But that's kind of not how that's used for phonetic respelling. So in IPA, there's just a very strict, and it's a universal, like a global understanding of how to pronounce each one of these characters that you see here. So anyway, 2 different ways to understand that. But so I'm showing you how the pronunciations are spelled in dictionaries, and you might be wondering, well, but how does that help me figure out the number of syllables in the word? Well, let's take a look back at the dictionary, and we'll find a more polysyllabic word like photography. So there's 2 ways you can tell the number of syllables, and it's the phonetic respelling or the IPA. In phonetic respelling, there's going to be a dash or a dot in between syllables. So that'll help you tell 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 4 syllables here. Photography. If we go to IPA, there's a space between each one of those syllables. Photography. So that's how you can tell the number of syllables in a word. Oops, jumped too far ahead. Oh. Okay. Syllables and stress. So we talked about how you can tell the number of syllables in a word, right? Use the dictionary. You can sound it out by clapping it. There's also, check out in the Canvas shell this week, there's a video on 5 tips for understanding or for detecting the number of syllables in a word. And detecting stress and unstressed syllables. That's a great video, much better quality than the video that you're going to get from me, because she's a professional YouTuber. So you can definitely check that out. I think you'll find it really helpful for this week. But syllables can be stressed or unstressed. So there's 2 types of syllables. And you can consult the dictionary to find those stress patterns. So if I'm looking in IPA, for example, notice this little accent here before the DEI. So that little accent shows me that that syllable is stressed, which means that we say today and we don't say today, right? That would be weird if I said, what are you doing today? You wouldn't know what I said. You'd say, Teddy? Did you say Teddy? What did you say? So, but if I use the stress correctly, what are you doing today? Very clear and easy to understand. So that apostrophe that you see there, that shows me that the syllable is stressed. If you are using the phonetic respelling, then you'll notice that the stressed syllable is put in bold text. Now, in addition to stress and unstressed syllables, we can have different types of stressed syllables, and that happens in multisyllabic words. It also happens in complete sentences, which we'll take a look at in a minute. But so what that means is, if we have a word with more than one stress, there's going to be one syllable in there that gets the most oomph. It has the most stress. And so in a word like yesterday, you can see that there's actually 2 stresses here. The primary stress gets this accent up at the top. And in IPA, the secondary stress appears down here at the bottom. So what this means is the pronunciation for this word is yesterday. Yesterday. You can hear that day is a little bit stronger than der, but it's not quite as strong as yes. And you'll hear it more distinctly if I try to switch these around. If I make ter and day both completely unstressed, it would sound like this. Yesterday. But instead I would say yesterday. I add a little bit more voice and pitch to that last syllable there. So let's talk a little bit about how are stressed and unstressed syllables different? I think you may have been able to pick it up just by listening to me talk about it, but there's a science to it. So linguists take recordings of language and we run them through computer programs and we look at the waveform, right? And we analyze it and we can tell based on the stress of a word, we can tell based on the physical features of that audio recording whether the syllable is stressed or unstressed. So with stressed syllables, they tend to be louder than unstressed syllable. So take a look at this example from Robert Hayden's poem, Those Winter Sundays. So this is the first line of that poem. Sundays too, my father got up early. So the stressed syllables are louder than the unstressed syllables. And you can see here, some of the stressed syllables are sun, to. So I didn't put the stress on every single one of these syllables because we only put stress in IPA on the on multisyllabic words. But if we look at the overall accent of the sentence, every other syllable in this line is stressed. Sundays too, my father got up early. So every other one is stressed here. So if you listen to the way I say that sentence, Sundays too, my father got up early. You can hear that my voice gets louder on the first, the third, the fifth, the seventh, and the ninth syllable. And my voice gets quieter on the second, the fourth, the sixth, the eighth, and the 10th syllable. Louder, softer, louder, softer, louder, softer, right? Sundays too, my father got up early. So stressed syllables are louder. Stressed syllables are longer. They take longer to say. This isn't really that noticeable. This is hard to tell just from listening sometimes. This is something that we can see very acutely when we take a look at a waveform, the way that linguists do. So we won't spend too much time on that. But that's one thing to note is that unstressed syllables tend to be very short. In fact, they lead to what are called reduced vowels. And we'll talk a little bit more about that next week. And then stressed syllables have a higher pitch than unstressed syllables. So Sundays too, my father got up early. Hear that on those unstressed syllables, I keep going down, but I keep going up on the stressed syllables. This isn't just because I'm some musical songbird or something like that. This is just a natural feature of the English language, and we all have these features in our language. So the two things to really focus on here, I think, are loudness and pitch. Unless you're analyzing it under, in a computer program, notice that stressed syllables are louder and they're higher in pitch. So, and you can see down here, right, I have these two different ways of looking, just kind of breaking this down into the phonetics of it. And that helps me see the difference between the syllables or separate out the syllables, right? Sundays too, my father got up early. Well, when we're analyzing poetry, we have a process called scansion. And scansion is where we take a look through each line of the poem and we track whether each syllable is stressed or unstressed. We mark stressed syllables with an acute accent, which looks kind of like an apostrophe or a comma. We mark unstressed syllables with a breve, which looks kind of like a U. These are like universal signs, symbols in universal, I should say, in European languages. These are, and in many linguistic systems of notation. These are two symbols to accentuate, to indicate stress and unstress. But so take a look at the first word, Sundays. So you can see sun is stressed and days is unstressed. Two, Sundays too, right? Meaning Sundays also. My father. You can hear, can you hear the, in my pronunciation here? My father. If I slow it down, my father, you can really hear it's a higher pitch when I say fa. as opposed to there. You can hear that it's louder. It goes from quiet to loud, back to quiet. My father got up early. Sundays too, my father got up early. So that's why I was saying on the last one where we were looking at this in IPA, we don't really use this form to figure out stress or unstress, although we can use that in the dictionary to help us figure out in multisyllabic words whether one is stressed or not. But this is the system that we use in poetry when we're just analyzing. So this is called scansion. And this is one of the informal assignments I'm asking you guys to do this week. You don't have to turn it in, but I really hope that you'll take like a pen and paper and a notebook, and you'll take some of the poems that I recommended this week, and take some poems and song lyrics that you really love, and just break it down into the syllables and scansion. Try to figure out where the stresses and unstresses are, where the patterns in the rhythm are appearing in that music or in that poem. It might be really interesting what you find. And if you run into problems with that, send me an email. Say like, hey, Tom, you know, I'm performing some scansion on this song, and in this lyric it says blah, 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 blah. I'm not sure which one is stressed. So that'd be something to take a look at. Or to send me, and I'm happy to get some feedback on that too. So I want to compare one little thing here. Notice how changing a word, these two words, to and to, sound exactly the same, but the meaning of the two words is different. To, T-O-O, means also, right? So that means my father got up early every day of the week. Sundays too, right? So that means also. But here in this phrase, Sundays to my father were the best days. So I'm saying in my father's opinion. So this to is a preposition. Prepositions are what we in linguistics, we have content words and function words. Content words are words that have descriptive or concrete meaning, like Sunday or father, or even the word to. It has a meaning like of additional. To, in this word to as a preposition, this is considered a function word. It does not have a concrete or real meaning in the world. It only has a meaning in relation to another word. So if I were to say to, that wouldn't mean anything. You wouldn't know what I'm talking about because that has to have other words connected to it to have some meaning. So in this case, since it's a function word, we tend to unstress that in language. It would be unnatural if I was speaking a normal sentence to you. It would be unnatural if I said, Sundays too, my father got up, or Sundays too, my father were the best days. That would sound weird. You wouldn't know what I was saying because you'd think that I was saying Sundays too, my father were the best days, when I'm actually saying Sundays to my father were the best days. So that's something to notice, that the same word with the same sound could be stressed or unstressed depending on the situation. And we'll take another look at this in this next one that we're scanning here. So here's another simple scansion. And you may have heard this song before. It's from like 2000. It's called Don't Know Why. The songwriter is Jesse Harris, so I want to give attribution to that. But it's you probably know it from Nora Jones, who's the singer. So the song goes, I waited till I saw the sun. I don't know why I didn't come. I left you by the house of fun. I don't know why I didn't come. You should be able to hear a really obvious rhythm in that those lyrics. So you can see from the scansion here that we have alternating unstressed and stressed syllables. So it's a very simple rhythm. We've got a very simple rhythm, and it's got a pulse to it. That means it's recurring. It's going in a kind of a consistent pattern. So we've got an unstressed and a stressed, unstressed and a stressed. So one of the things for the assignment this week, we're not going to go into too much detail with it this week. I'm going to let you guys kind of get your hands dirty and see what you find looking into it. But we're going to talk about different metrical feet. And so once you start doing some research on that, come back and take a look at this one and notice that it's in iambic tetrameter. That means the feet are made of iambs. So we have an unstressed and a stressed, followed by an unstressed and a stressed, unstressed and a stressed, unstressed and a stressed. We have 4 feet per line. We call that tetrameter. So iambic tetrameter is what we're dealing with here. But notice that predictable pulse of the language works really smoothly with music, right? That works really well. So you'll find in music that music lyrics tend to have the most predictable and recurring rhythmic patterns. But something I want to note, I want to point out about this example. Um, if you take a look at the, I had these highlighted blue. I'm circling these words: till, by, I, and in. So if we listen to it the way that I said it just a minute ago, right? I waited till I saw the sun. Now I'm clapping out. I'm not clapping out every syllable. I'm clapping out the stressed beats. I'm clapping out the meter of each line, right? I waited till I saw the sun. I don't know why I didn't come. I left you by the house of fun. I don't know why I didn't come. When I saw the break of day, I wished that I could fly away instead of kneeling in the sand, catching teardrops in my hand. Very predictable, repeatable rhythm, right? But notice that it's artificial. In a normal conversation, I would never say something like, well, I waited till I saw the sun. That sounds very awkward and artificial, right? I would normally say, I waited till I saw the sun. I waited till I saw the sun. We would have 3 stressed syllables in this line, not 4. So this is something to notice about poetry and about music, about this imposition of a rhythm or a meter onto language, is that there's going to be some artifice to it. There's going to be there's going to be a mold formed by the meter, and there's going to be some forcing of the syllables of the language into that meter sometimes. So that's something to notice as we go through this week. So for example, when you look at the song lyrics by this one and then the one by Casey Musgraves, you're going to notice that that there's some difference between the way the singer sings the song on the beats and the way that a person would normally speak each of the lines in the language. When you take a look at The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe, do some scansion on that and notice the tightness and the precision of the use of stressed and unstressed syllables in there. So The Raven has a very tight scansion. We don't have these instances of difference between the way that we would normally speak it and the way that it appears in the text. There's no mold that's being forced into. So something interesting to pay attention to. So that's the main things I want you to know about syllables, about rhythm in poetry. And next week, we're going to talk more about meter and analyzing and just detecting different types of meter and comparing a little bit more with the principles of music. But so I want us to point out a few exceptions because you may run into these this week. So sometimes vowels are silent. And so we talked earlier about how, we all know that an E at the end of the word, for the most part, is going to be a silent E, following a long vowel sound. But take a look at this word, interest. Is that 2 or 3 syllables? Interest. If you look it up in the dictionary, it'll give you an interesting answer. No pun intended there. So notice it's got interest, but then also trist. How do you say it? Do you say interest or do you say interest? Depending on your accent or how you heard that word spoken when you were growing up is going to determine whether you hear 2 or 3 syllables there. Most people, at least in standard American English, most people pronounce that word with 2 syllables. They reduce that E in the middle so much that the TR becomes a tr sound, interest. Take a look at the next one. We've got strengthened. Is this 2 or 3 syllables? So we've got 3 E's in the word, strengthened, right? But if you know, as you may be well aware, ED doesn't always make a whole vowel sound, right? It doesn't necessarily always sound like ed. It only sounds like ed after a T or an S, something like that, or not an S, like a T or a D. So in this word, strengthened, don't be fooled into thinking that this is 3 syllables long. This is that trick I was pointing out earlier. Sometimes people get tripped up by the clapping method. Strengthened. There's no duh in that sound. So if you think about where is the vowel sound in the syllable duh? Duh, duh, duh. Does it appear before the D or after the D? Duh, duh, duh. It's appearing after the D. There is no vowel in the word after the D, right? So that's one way to tell that I'm artificially, like I'm trying to exaggerate so that I can hear the pronunciation. But notice sometimes you can fall into that trap of adding an extra vowel sound after a final consonant. So there's no vowel after the consonant. So just throw away that duh that you're making there. This word is 2 syllables, strength, thund. So sometimes consonant sounds like N or L can act like vowel sounds too. And this is something that you'll notice when you start looking for pronunciations in the dictionary. So bottle, for example, the vowel sound in that word is O, which is actually a consonant sound. It's what's called in linguistics a dark L. Mountain. So notice in that second syllable, people don't generally say mountain or mountain. It would be a little forced, I think, to pronounce it that way. Most folks in American English will pronounce it mountain. So that sound, it creates a vowel sound. So sometimes you'll notice that L or N are being represented as vowel sounds. Roll with that. It's a vowel sound. So other consonant sounds do not count as a vowel sound, even at the end of the word. So for example, that D, right, like we were saying up here was strengthened. Strengthened is not 3 syllables. Round is not 2 syllables, it's just 1. Round. Close. This is actually just 1 syllable. It's a mouthful because it's got the dark TH sound and it's got a Z sound. Close. It's a mouthful, but it's just 1 syllable because you've only got 1 vowel sound, and that's O. So one last thing to point out in terms of exceptions, just be aware that when you look at the sentence level, the stress of a syllable can changing on the context, or can change depending on the context. It can depend on the context too. So take a look at this example. How was your day? So the stress in that sentence, listen for where does the pitch go up? Where are the words louder? How was your day? How was your day? How was your day? How was your day? There's more emphasis on how and day, and was your both get kind of reduced. They are unstressed. So in this sentence, day is stressed. Take a look at the next one. Mine was fine. How was your day? So notice in that sentence, day is no longer stressed. Your is stressed. So, hey, how was your day? Mine was fine. How was your day? So notice that words don't necessarily have to be stressed words or unstressed words, like as a universal rule. Sometimes it depends on the context. Did you work the swing shift? I worked the Sunday day shift. So notice in this sentence, we've got 2 syllables that both say day right next to each other. Notice that this day is unstressed, this day is stressed. I worked the Sunday day shift. The last one, was that the last day you worked there? Yes, and it was also the first day I worked there. So notice this one, the point of interest in this sentence is the last day, like which day was it that you worked there? So that word is what's getting stressed in the sentence. So day can be a stressed word, it can be an unstressed word. So when you think about stress with individual words, sometimes you're gonna find that there's primary and secondary stress getting shifted. Sometimes stressed words become unstressed words, all depending on the context of at the sentence level. So just something to be aware of. So that I want you to know kind of about that so you're not totally confused as you go through the poetry for this week. So those are the main things that I have to share with you all. Take a look at the module for this week. Get your hands dirty. Like I said, pen and paper. Take your favorite songs. Start executing some scansion. Find out how that poem or that song, how does that work at that nitty-gritty level? Is there an overarching pattern to what's going on? Is there some method or system to the language being used in there? And what is think about what is the emotional impact or the extra textual, meaning beyond just the text? What's the extra textual impact of the use of rhythm in language. So have fun with that this week. Email me with any questions. And as you guys know, you can set up appointments with me Tuesday or Thursday during the 10 o'clock hour. I've also got the open office hours at 1 o'clock on Thursday. So I hope some of you guys will stop by there and share with me some of the cool poems and song lyrics that you're performing scansion on this week. I want to find out what you guys are working with this week. So hope to talk to you all later on this week. Have a good one.